Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final episode of the Profit Power Hour here, live from LSU. Got some fine panelists in person with me. I don't think I've ever done an in-person webinar before, so this is super fun.
Yeah.
Sam Schwetz, Ben Sensenbaugh. We also have Wolfgang Krotsky going to be joining us in a little bit, but he's on the conference floor right now, and we're super excited to end this year of Profit Power Hour episodes with something that we've been thinking and talking a lot about over the last year, and that is going from process to performance. How to measure, benchmark, and improve productivity for each member. I'm going to do a little bit of talking today, but I've got two productivity gurus in the house with me today. But we want to know where you're tuning in from, and so jump in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from today. And what's one thing you're looking forward to about the Christmas holiday? So jump in the chat, light that up, and we look forward to seeing who's on live today with us as we tune in live from LSU. We got Sam Schwetz with Mason Properties. Sam, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah.
Zach Percumpus is on the stage right now doing a product demo, so he's probably going to jump in about 10 minutes. And also Wolfgang Krotsky going to jump in later. And Ben Sensenbaugh. Ben was on the stage earlier today, so hasn't gotten breakfast and is probably going to go grab lunch in a few minutes, but we got him while we can. Well, thanks so much for joining today. We're excited to talk about something that I think is going to be hugely impactful for you going into 2024. Of course, me, Daniel Craig, author of the NARPM Accounting Standards and CEO of Profit Coach. And what we're talking about today is something that I hope is going to generate some questions as we go along. So be sure and drop those into the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll be sure to answer those questions as you drop them in. I'll try to keep an eye on chat, but sometimes it's hard to do both. Well, as we wrap up the year, always with these episodes, we're focused on facilitating a transformation of mindset to help you move from financial fog to financial clarity. And in this case, we're wanting to go from operational fog to operational clarity. That's what we're talking a little bit more about today, kind of following up on our Operationalizing Profit webinar series. And hopefully help you get from gut-based decision-making to benchmarking and predictable forecasting that leads you to benchmark and breakthrough success. So are you ready? Let's dive in to this topic here. From process to performance, how to measure, benchmark, and improve productivity for every member of your team. By the way, there's a lot of you that are in chat, but a lot of you are chatting the hosts and panelists. Go and switch that to everyone so we can interact as a group. Okay, I want to start out with a poll, and we're going to get a little bit of feedback from the audience here, just in terms of what software you're using for workflow automation. We're going to launch that poll, and we're going to dive in and get some feedback. But guys, I just want to start out with some questions here. You guys have both invested heavily in software. What are some beliefs that have shifted for you over the years as to what generates productivity? Okay, I think there's some sort of dynamic in our industry where it's I'm going to sign up for this workflow software and it's going to fix all my problems. I'm going to drop a big check on a workflow automation implementation and it's going to fix all my problems. Just like in transparency, in my experience, one of the biggest busts that I've seen in terms of looking at the P&Ls of hundreds of companies is massive spend on software implementation and particularly workflow automation that ends up just getting scrapped. That's not true across the board. It makes a huge difference if it's done right. What are some myths that you think maybe you believed at one time about productivity, or just what is your thoughts on how software drives productivity today, maybe even compared to the past? Sam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I definitely bought into the idea that if I had the right software, it would solve all of my problems. Yeah. And as a result, I went from one to another. I would switch things up. I think I probably exhausted my team in doing that, and just having them have to also go along with whatever my next idea was. And I really started to realize it's so much more of a mindset thing, as it is just what the software is. You can be extremely productive on paper. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could have a paper notebook that you keep track of things in. and be productive. But reducing distraction in the workplace is probably one of the best things you can do. A good process automation software can help you do that. It can also be distracting in and of itself. So I've really come to realize it's not the software. Seeing some of the results of the poll, not to spoil anything yet, but Lead Simple is what we're on. And it's really helpful. Obviously at Lead Simple University. Probably goes without saying.
Ben, you're not actually on Lead Simple for everything, but you are on for the CRM side of thing. But yeah, some of your thoughts on.
The software is a tool. The process and the management and culture is more important. So you can still run a company on paper, but you know you're going to lose a lot on that. So you know the investing heavily in software again it's a tool, but it should be rolled out with really good processes, and you got to have those defined. Everyone needs to be bought in on those. And when you're defining that, you're asking the staff. It's not me writing the process, it's us writing the process. And how is this going to make it easier for you? You know, where do you make mistakes? When you know, and really kind of mistake proof the whole process. And then you add the software back into it to make sure that doesn't happen. So it's not a click of a button. It's a massive effort. It's a personal effort on whoever's working on that one process. You know, to get rid of paper, to get rid of walking into what do I have to do today? It's you know, the software should provide that, but then you should be able to pick it up and keep on going. So
you also mentioned the culture and the management and people piece, so we're gonna dig into that in a little bit.
It's a big piece.
But just quick results on the poll here, just to launch this, looks like about 8% on Asana, 3% Process Street, 46% on Lead Simple, 5% Monday.com, and Apple's coming up there with Asana at 8%. So
Podio?
yes, Podio's 1%, Ben.
Hey, where's my butt up there?
We'll send you the poll results later. So what I want to do in the time we have together today is hopefully for those watching, facilitate something of a shift in thinking around what drives performance and the connection between process and performance. And to do that, I want you to think, Ben, I've shared this analogy with Sam, so I'm going to get your feedback on this analogy in real time. But I want you to think about property management like racing, okay? Racing fast cars, Indy 500, NASCAR, whatever you do, okay? It's a fast race, I think we'd all agree with that. And in order to maximize speed, you obviously need a really, really great runway or a really great racetrack, all right? If you're racing on a racetrack with gaping holes like this one, you're not gonna have the results you want, right? So I think we can agree that the quality of the racetrack matters. And I want you to think about your team as the racing vehicle, all right? They're the people that you're putting on the racetrack to actually go down the track and win the race. And I think what I've seen in my interaction with clients is that oftentimes there's this idea like, if all I do is build a really slick racetrack, then we're gonna win. And the performance of the team sort of gets lost. And if you have a team that performs like this car, you're not gonna win the race, right? And so just unpack that and summarize that a little bit. The idea here is that workflows and automation are amazing, but workflows and automation will not make your company amazing. And only a high-performing team can do that. So Ben, what does that high-performance piece of it look like for you when you layer that on top of the software? Like, what are you looking for the software to do, and how do you distinguish that from what a high-performing team needs to do?
It's an interesting analogy. I always use sports references, but I guess it's kind of a sport. But you know, I think the main thing is to make sure that there's no holes. I mean, that has to be number one. And whenever there is a hole, it's when you're going to lose face, you're going to lose your team, they're going to fall off that cliff. And so I think having the racetrack and make sure there's no excuses. You know, I don't want to do this because it doesn't work or there's a glitch, whatever. You got to remove all of that. It has to be a perfectly smooth racetrack. And it's constant maintenance. Road work never ends. We all know this.
Yes.
It's a
especially when there's lots of cars driving down.
And once it's built, it's never done. And you want to hear that feedback to say, hey, my tires are too slick, or
Yeah.
I need a different grip, so you
You're
gotta
running with the
be
analogy well here.
you gotta constantly be improving that surface.
Yeah.
And the day you let it go is the day it's something's gonna break.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they're not gonna perform at the same level anymore. And there's gonna be a degradation of
Yeah.
performance of that person.
Mhm.
It's gonna be minute, and over time, if you're not monitoring closely,
Mhm.
it's gonna come to a stop.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be because there's a hole in the road, it's because it wasn't properly improved.
Yeah,
And I think it's a huge part. I've heard some things like you set up a zap and you never think of it again.
Yeah.
This isn't a zap.
Yeah.
This is more, it's more than that. It's ever changing. So,
Yeah, that helps, but so, I mean, you have to have the racetrack smooth, but then the team that you put on the racetrack,
Yeah.
what is their piece of this, and how are you thinking about their competence
Mhm.
on the racetrack?
Yeah, they're learning the track
Yeah.
every time they go around.
Yeah.
And the more times you go around, the better you get. So, and there's also going to be the guys who always win. There's going to be those are going to be your group leaders and your subject matter experts and things. But to monitor those guys, and I think you put anyone in a race car,
Yeah.
and you can teach them how to go around,
Mhm.
but can they keep up, and can they be pushing the pack and getting that feedback and be able to explain the challenges they're getting? That is so important, is that communication back to the manager, back to the developer, and it's a two-way street. And they're also telling you what the customer's saying, right?
Yeah.
So you bring the customer back in, and that's why everything is always improving.
Yeah.
So they just have to be good communicators, though, basically,
Yeah,
and just tell us where the problems are.
your thoughts on that, Sam, in terms of the productivity performance side of the team as you put them into the process?
Yeah, I mean, to continue the analogy, I think that the racetrack needs the car and the car needs the racetrack. They really need each other,
Yeah.
because one thing that you'll hear, especially when rolling out workflow software, like what you're saying, is not working. We're spending so much money, we're not getting the results that we thought that we were gonna get. So let's just throw out the racetrack, right? To continue the analogy. And now you can, so we just need the best people. So we'll just get a Formula One race car.
Yeah.
And we'll drop it on a dirt road.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
They're gonna spin out. There's only so much that you can get out of the car.
Yeah.
Without having a track that's gonna support it. And so I really think that the two very much go hand in hand. In the same way that you can't expect to have a great racetrack and then the crappy car. You need to have processes should be supporting the team.
Yeah.
In what they're doing. It's not telling them, you're a button pusher, you're just gonna do these things and that's it. Don't ever use your brain. It's not that at all.
Yeah.
It's a full support system for the team so that there's clarity in what exactly am I supposed to do. There's support in the stuff that can be automated, that can be filled in, like emails and the things that just have to happen all the time that are repeatable, to take that kind of mind numbing, just busy work off of their plate. The process can support them if it's a powered process like Lead Simple allows, or even Monday.com does, and Process Street does the same thing. I've tinkered with all of them.
Yeah.
And they all have the ability to do that, but I think really the two should be supporting each other.
Awesome. All right, so I want to just give you a little bit of some data for those of you live today on why you should care about this conversation. One of the things that we looked at when we did the 2022 financial benchmark study is what is the capacity of one team versus another team when it comes to the number of units that a particular team can manage. And so we introduced this number called this metric called units per direct team member. Okay, and this was the idea was to looking underneath the hood, what's driving the labor efficiency of one team versus another. And what we discovered, if you're looking at the screen right now, is that the lowest performers, teams with the lowest capacity, were only managing about 41 units per team member, whereas teams with the highest capacity were managing 58. Okay. And that's a 42% difference, right? Huge. The difference between, if you want to just back it off a little bit, between the average here at 49 and the top performers at 58 is a 19% increase, okay? Now, some people online today might be like, okay, 90% like it's not that big of a number. But just to put this in context, That is a very significant difference. The $166,000 question that I want to ask you is, what if you were able to increase capacity by 19% without increasing the size of your staff? Zach, come on in. We're doing this live, we're doing this roundtable today.
Hey, everybody.
Let the product demo go.
Awesome.
All right.
Live from LSU. Stoked.
Yeah, 43% of the people on there are Lead Simple users. So, all right.
Fantastic.
So what would happen if you were able to increase the capacity of your team by 19% without increasing the size? For the average size property management company, that would result in $166,000 in additional revenue, most of which is going to drop to the bottom line, right? Because you're not adding additional staff. So that's the opportunity. But the question is like, how do you know if that opportunity is there for you? Like, how do you measure that? You know, how do you measure the productivity of your team? How do you benchmark and improve the performance of every team member in real time? And how do you build a culture so that every day they leave the office feeling like this? All right. I think there's this sort of status quo in property management where it's just like, if you sign up to be a property manager, you're signed up to the world's worst job. Like, that just face it, we just need to hire people who are happy doing horrible stuff. But then you've challenged this a little bit. And you know, we don't want our people leaving like this. We want them leaving happy. And you've introduced this idea of, you know, what do I need to be introducing to my team to make them be able to feel like I can go home now and I know everything's done. I have confidence. They have confidence. You have confidence. We're gonna get there in just a moment.
Okay.
But upstream of that is like the pain. All right.
Mhm.
So I want to talk a little bit about like why PM is a painful process. And Zach, you talk with a lot of people. And I want you guys to help me unpack this. So four areas of pain that I think come from a lack of clarity. The number one is lack of clarity on prioritization. Wolf wasn't able to join us yet, but I had a call with him like 2 months ago, and I was asking him like, hey, you know, we're thinking about building this tech product to help clarify performance. By the way, I'm going to show that to you in a little bit here. And he's like, let me show you Maynard's task list. Maynard has 50 overdue tasks. Like, which one should he do first? How does he feel like he can win today? There's just not clarity on prioritization. Talk about that, Ben. Like, you know, there's all these firestorms. Help people unpack a little bit of what that pain looks like and your thoughts on how to solve that.
Yeah, that's a longer conversation. But the quick one is the firestorms. You got to eliminate the firestorms, and again, those are the mistakes.
Yeah.
Because the job is it should be repeatable.
Yeah.
And when a firestorm happens, or as I mentioned on stage, was, you know, when a bottle breaks in a bottle line, that is now a firestorm that everyone down or upstream of that can't do anything now because that has happened. So it became critical capital. Once you pull out that bottle or that eviction or that you know flooded house, then the things can go back. So then you have a firestorm. You put your firestorm. You got to isolate the firestorm, understand the firestorm.
Yeah.
And you should have one person probably take that. So, but also you also got to know the scoreboard. I mean, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I think, but
Yeah, we're gonna get there.
but yeah, that's what I think. I don't think property management's not hard. It's predictable.
Yeah.
You got to take out the unpredicted and push it aside. Find out why it happened. Never happened again.
Yeah.
If I can make a space shuttle reference, we can't have zero mistakes. A million systems and processes have to work perfectly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people die.
Yeah.
Definitely not in property
Yeah.
management.
Yeah.
But you know, we still have to understand when the simplest screw falls out of the whatever it is, the spacecraft. We got to understand why that screw fell out.
Yeah.
So understanding, fine tuning, that's super important.
Yeah. So when it comes to this whole idea of prioritization focus, I think it was Wolf this morning was talking about the idea that, like, you know, the average team member has 30 interruptions in a day and it takes 9 minutes to get back on track. And when you have a task list that sort of, you know, looks like this, it's kind of hard to do that quickly.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's this all the interruptions, daycare calls for your kid, you know. What is some of the pain that you have seen with your team in terms of like this inability to prioritize?
Well, in managing it, you know, something that starts out small becomes really big.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a list like this of all these tasks and you don't have clarity on like what I should do next. And so I just picked something at random. Well, some of those are ticking time bombs
Yeah.
where there really is a certain amount of time that you're gonna have to take
Yeah.
to get
Come on
that
in.
wolf, to get that handled.
Yeah.
Before it becomes a much bigger problem. So that's the pain
It's going
that,
man.
that's a pain I've seen is something that could have been handled very quickly.
Yeah.
But because it was lost in a big old task list, didn't, and now it's become this like show-stopping event
Yeah.
where now an owner's mad or a tenant's upset and they're demanding, time on the phone and we're all trying to prevent the 1-star
Yeah.
review. And so now something that probably could have taken 5 minutes to handle 2 days ago got dropped and now it's a minimum of a half hour to fix it. And potentially financial as well.
Wolf.
I'm telling about a conversation I had with you.
Yeah, I was like, wait, is that gone? And this one, we're. Not where that is.
Good job. So we're talking about the pain of prioritization.
Oh, yes.
And the challenge of focus and just the whole idea of when our team comes to work with a task list like this, it can be challenging for them to like merge into, here's exactly what I have to do
Yeah.
to succeed today. And we end up creating sort of this friction of prioritization. It's like, I have to sort through this, task list 6 times a day. So I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on just like what you've seen with that. And
Yeah, no, that screenshot, I remember that conversation, talking about some of the struggles we were having with the native task organization inside of Lead Simple, and just got to hear about all the new AI stuff that's gonna make that a whole lot easier, so that's pretty exciting, but it's really draining on your staff members when they don't know what they're supposed to do, like they show up, they brought their A game, they wanna give you their best, and they're just like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, I got all these things and they all look important, which ones really are.
Yeah.
And if you let them select, there's gonna be friction because like, no, I wanted you to talk to that owner because they're blowing up my phone, but you decided to talk to that tenant.
Yeah.
Well, they're talking to the tenant because the tenant was blowing up their phone and that was more of a pain than the pain I was feeling.
Yeah.
And so we definitely haven't nailed the prioritization game, but it's critical because it's a priority, right? And it's prioritization, but
Yeah.
it's creating that great work environment for
Yeah.
your team is really important because they want to give their all, but where do they give it?
I want to talk a little bit about the pain of specifically when it comes to capacity. We've all had those conversations with our team, and it's like, how many people have ever come to you and said like, "Hey, boss, I need more work, right? Can you give me more work to do, right?" So there's this constant stream of like, I've got so much to do. Ben, what are some of the things that you guys have done to sort of make visible the work so that you can get more clarity on what utilization and capacity looks like for each team member?
We have department dashboards.
Yeah.
So it's back to the race car reference, we can kind of position and then each team member maybe against each other in a department, but we also are able to prioritize kind of what you're saying, like the bad stuff. We can see what is red and we're able to in live time know the health of the business or the health of the race car, whatever we're talking about exactly. But these dashboards allows them to self-manage and kind of pick it out, but we definitely have to define what is important. And that's a conversation, and things happen over time where if it is a phone call or things, well, maybe someone else should be answering the phone and not this person, and that's something else at a time. But
Self-managing thing, you keep referencing that, and so what makes that possible?
Clarity on what's expected of that team member. So they know that I really don't care what they do all day. As long as this is done. And that will put and everything is staying in the green or maybe a little bit in the yellow and bring it back to the green. But by the end of the day or the end of the quarter or end of whatever is the time frame defined, they know. And if I'm gonna walk around and look at their dashboard, all I gotta do is point. And be like, bro. Or sir. But let's go. You know where you stand. And it's not a hidden secret. So
I love that. Point to the dashboard. Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit about clarity on prioritization, clarity on utilization, clarity on performance benchmarks. And guys, this is a little bit of the hobby works for me. It's like, how much can a person do, right? Like what's possible? We were able to do that a lot with the financial benchmarks. How are you guys benchmarking your team members right now? Like, how do you know if your A player can be a super A player, and how do you know when to fire your B players? Any thoughts on that?
We run in pods,
Yeah.
so we have multiple different teams that are all doing the same thing
Yeah.
roughly. And so that makes it really easy to compare.
Yeah.
Why is this team able to handle more
Yeah.
than this other team? Why is this, and there's redundancy in the positions within the pod, so I can compare against basically 4 different people doing the exact same job.
You have some internal benchmark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's some gamification, there's
Yeah.
also some competition that we're able to do. We compete on keeping the work order count as low as possible.
Nice.
I love that because it's helpful for the team and it's also helpful for the tenant to get their issue handled quickly and for the owner to have stuff taken care of quickly. I mean, everybody's winning in that scenario, including the team.
Awesome. So what all this kind of amounts to is, I think for a lot of property managers, and I'm talking about the PMs themselves, leasing agents, the maintenance coordinators, there's just oftentimes a lack of clarity on what I need to do to win today. You guys have surfaced that. And so I want to talk a little bit about just some things that we've been thinking about here at Profit Coach in terms of how people are thinking about data and analysis. And Zach, it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this, because I know that data is a big part of your strategy at Lead Simple. But I'm just going to blow through sort of kind of 2 frameworks. One is a cycle of losing, and that is where you measure what happened 1 to 6 months ago or worse. Okay. And then you benchmark based on gut feeling. Like, I think we should be able to do this. Like, I had this anecdotal conversation with Joe over at XYZ PM, right? And then you improve too late or never. But the cycle of winning is you measure what is happening today, and you benchmark against top performers. If you can in your team, that's great. But what about benchmarking in the industry? And then you improve in real time. One more slide, and then I want you guys to dive in with some commentary. So what we've been thinking about is that there's this hierarchy of insight, okay? And what we mean by that is that, like, most property managers, they have very limited reporting. I'm talking about the owners, and they manage based on the bank balance, right? I log into chase.com, and if I have money in the bank today, it's great, and if I don't, it's a bad day, right? And then the next level up with that is some financial metrics. And what we try to do with Profit Coach, what we have done with Profit Coach is, give clarity on things like churn and revenue per unit and labor efficiency that help drive that bottom line. But Wolf, you made the point, like, okay, what makes churn happen, right? So why am I talking about churn when I know there's 5 different things that are driving churn? And that would be the next level of insight, which is operational metrics. But what we're thinking about, and this, Ben, I'm just going to give credit where credit is due, is the next level of insight, which I think is a holy grail of real value insight, which is real-time insight. These first 3 layers, what they do is they tell you what happened yesterday or 6 months ago, all right? It's like watching the game film at the NFL, right? The Seahawks, yeah. You remember this play? This is from 3 weeks ago. And so, it's like, what do you, when it's 2nd and 10 with 3 seconds left to play the game, what do you need to do? Somebody tell me. 2nd and 10 on the 20-yard line with 3 seconds left in the game. What do? You take a field goal, right? You don't want to go into the practice room afterwards and watch the game film and say, what should we have done there? No, you need real-time reporting that tells you what play to call right now so that you can win. So, Ben, you've been a champion of this. And you talked a little bit about this whole idea of, can I go home yet? And I think that's getting to the heart of this idea of changing performance in real time. So you're not just looking at reports that tell you what happened in the past, but reports that help you create a better future right now. Record is sort of the mastermind behind this concept of, can I go home yet? Unpack that a little bit.
I mean, it's really just setting up those requirements of, can I go home yet? So, years ago we walked around and people didn't know when they could go home. I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Things are red. And so we just had to sit, and they said, well, I didn't know that I had to do that today. So it really kind of happened kind of organically. We had real-time dashboards, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Accountability. Yeah, it turned into accountability. So, and then also when you have a baseline of real-time metrics, which will eventually go into pastime.
Yeah.
Then you have a baseline to say, okay, now we can improve, or we know where the problems in the organization are. And when we know that, then we can apply a fix to reduce churn. So churn can happen in any portion of the business, and it could be in multiple parts of the business. But
Yeah.
you can't just reduce churn by doing, this owner was upset about one late payment. Well,
Yeah.
it wasn't just that. It was a whole bunch of things that caused that, but you can really kind of break it down when you have all the right metrics in front of you. You have data. It's the same
Yeah.
thing you've done with Profit Coach.
Yeah.
We know where the money is.
Yeah.
Now we can bet on customer acquisition costs. I can bet on this.
Yeah.
It's not really a bet. It's,
Yeah.
it's a smart move.
Yeah.
To do that. So you can do the same thing with operational metrics and real-time metrics and say, hey, we got something trending right now.
Yes,
I need to put somebody on this.
Yes.
And we can solve it by the end of the day or the end of the week or whatever it is.
it's all by the end of the day. Guys, thoughts on this concept here?
I think my thoughts on the real-time metrics is currently it's changing how hard that is for most management companies
Yeah.
to do.
Yes.
To be able to have that.
Yeah.
It's. For most, it's, well, I can go into Appfolio, probably pull up a report, that's snapshot right now, and that's that, but to know. How many, processes are late or done, how many this, that, it's hard to have all that information right now for the average property manager to just have a dashboard with real live. Gauges of what are we doing right now, how
Yeah.
are we doing, and so I think that's why people get frustrated.
Financial reporting is only one piece of it too.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what caused it? What should be
Yeah.
happening? What communication steps should be going out? What tasks should be done? Who should they be assigned to? So you get kind of a little bit of a red flag, like, ooh, financials are up, but that usually that's way too late.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
super lagging
Yeah.
indicator of, oh my gosh, well, we didn't charge those fees because we didn't do the lease renewal the way we should have.
Yeah.
And that's because Sally doesn't know that that's part of her job and
Yeah.
expectation that she do that 90 days in advance. And then we get back to this constant reaction versus proactively working on. And then again, back to priority, which you guys talked about quite a bit, but like, you have to prioritize, and Ben, you talked about this, revenue producing or revenue related
Activities.
activities. First.
Yeah.
There has to be a bar where you think, how much money am I losing, or how much could I make if we were to make these changes? And sometimes it's hard to think through that, but lease renewals is a great one, applications can be a great one. If there's a lot, just look at where labor's going too, to try to evaluate where we're losing the most money and the most time.
So I think the question here is, can you clarify for your team what they need to do today to win? And when they can go home? I think that's what's gonna create that sort of winning sentiment, even in a day of chaos, right? Like, I did the things that I needed to do. I won, even though it was chaotic at times today. So we have stolen your concept, Ben. I don't think you called it, can I go home yet? It's like, can I go home today? I'm like, I need an acronym for this. And so we switched it to can I go home yet? And we're calling these metrics SIGI metrics. And the idea is that SIGI metrics tell your team what needs to be done today to win. To your point, Wolf, that's been very hard to do, okay? So Zach and I started talking, we talked about this about a year ago, and then we re-upped the conversation 3 months ago. And the reality is I've been mining data from major property management softwares for years. And this kind of real-time data, like it just like fundamentally doesn't exist
Right.
in your PMS. Lead Simple, and we're gonna have a little bit of a Lead Simple Love Fest session. So there's 43% of the people on here that are gonna be okay with that. Is changing that reality. And so I don't know what it was, but that's sort of just like, hey, you know what? All this data that we want, like this is existing in Lead Simple now because of the way that people are doing their work and moving their workflows to Lead Simple. Lead Simple stores the data historically. And so we now have an opportunity for the common man to start having access. Or woman, thank you. I was referencing the
I know.
Aaron Copland musical piece there, so.
Oh, I know, just gotta make sure these days,
Yes. So we had those conversations, we started talking about API integrations, and then I reached out to you, Sam, I'm like, hey man, we got this idea. Can we prototype this? And so then what happened is in October of this year, we sat down we were in that conference room for like 3 hours or 4 hours.
Yep.
And we basically mapped out for Mesa property management, what are the SIGI metrics, can I go home yet metrics, the experience metrics, the productivity metrics that would give Sam or any owner the confidence to know that their business is running well. And so what I want to do is show you guys what we built.
Mhm.
And
I don't know, I can't handle 2 product releases in one day, this is been crazy.
so I want to first thank you guys for spending those hours with us and Ben for the thought leadership in this. But what we've built is a platform that integrates in real time with Lead Simple. And Lead Simple is the source of a ton of great data, a ton of consistent data. And because of the way that it's structured, it's extremely customizable, but yet you can build macro measurements on top of that data in a way that really works. And so, Sam, these are the, I'm gonna count it out here.
This is live?
This is
Yeah.
live. These are the.
All right, that's cool.
These are the 13
Heads
These are the 13 Siggy metrics that we defined, okay? And so we're just gonna spend a few minutes, like, I'm not gonna go through the entire dashboard, but I do wanna just talk about this whole concept of Siggy, because I think it's really hugely valuable. So the idea here with the Siggy metric is all of these numbers pretty much are supposed to be at 0
Yeah.
by the end of the day, okay? So like, just walk us through a few of these. Why are these important to
Sure.
like the confidence of your team knowing I can go home now when that's 0 and I still win?
Yeah, I mean, just starting at the top with applications, we should be able to process an application within 5 days. So if something is taking longer than 5 days, there's a problem. Maybe it's on us for not processing, maybe it's on an applicant for not getting the information to us that we need. And then moving on to applications not touched today, that's people are very like anxious when they apply for a property. They want to know, am I going to get this house or am I not? And a lot of times, I mean, they get upset when you tell them no, but for the most part, they just want an answer, yes or no, so that they can move on, oftentimes emotionally from the attachment that they've had to that property. So we really want to make sure, just from an experience standpoint, that we are actively working on every application every day, even if it's only to tell them, hey, we're still waiting on your past landlord reference to get back to us. So that's an important one. I'll move this down to
Yeah.
move in and move out. So we have a requirement to do move-in inspections at least 3 days before the tenant's actually moving in. We use the inspector. We don't do the move-in with the tenant. We do it beforehand. And we want to catch any issues with the property that could exist, prior to. So if I'm trying to prioritize, back to the conversation before about what should I be doing next? Well, if I've got a move-in inspection that's due, those take a couple hours. So what's the plan? I mean, we're really far gone if we're at that point going, I don't even have this thing scheduled yet. But getting an inspector out there to actually document the condition and find any potential issues, so we're not moving a tenant in and like, oh, we didn't realize that the toilet was leaking or something like that. So
That's great. Yeah. So the whole idea here is like elevates the priority,
Yep.
clarifies focus in real time.
Yep.
Then any additional thoughts on like some of the key Siggy metrics that you guys have
They
focused on?
evolve over time.
Yeah.
Because the staff will become very good. Some of these things are gonna be company level.
Yeah.
That whatever they are in every business are different, but people are gonna get really good at something,
Yeah.
and then something else, you're like, I bet you we can improve this now.
Yeah.
So the whole organization will start to go up when you set up the right numbers.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. And we got some gamification built in here with the various teams that you can start to filter the data down to. So now I want to just show a little bit of how this interacts with Lead Simple, right? So it has to be smooth, it has to be a fast racetrack. So all right, there's 4 keys not received for today's move out. So let's just double click the 4. And we have the 4 processes that are actually in question here. So we're just gonna go and click right into that process. It takes me directly to Lead Simple. And here is the task that needs to be completed today. I'm not gonna get fired if I complete this task when it's not actually done. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click this off. And that task is now done. And that's going to reflect in the dashboard.
Remember that one.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the time.
Test property.
His cell phone goes off, hey, I didn't get my keys yet, you get it now.
And so right away it takes them into the workflow and prioritizes what they need to do, and that prioritizes the task list in real time. Okay, so we're going to come back to that in just a moment. That's the Siggy metrics. But then, as Ben was saying, that data does move historical. And so you need to start understanding what the trends are over time, as well as key things that are going on in your company that everybody needs to have clarity on. So 11 vacant unlisted units, right? So I don't know if that's part of your daily huddle or what kind of visibility you're having on that in terms of your conversations, but you double click it, pulls up a list right there, and you can have the conversation right there in your daily huddle. We need to make sure we address these properties today. Vacancies older than 20 days, average days on market 21. Here's what you were talking about, Wolf. What is your renewal rate? Here's all of Sam's completed and canceled stages right here. So we know,
83,
so we know exactly what's happening to the backlog of Sam's renewals. Where are they all going? It's not just a renewal rate, but actually understanding very specifically what's going on there. 7 work orders waiting on owner estimate approval. And then now we're starting to get the trending data, work orders older than 5 days or work orders days to completion. You can see the trending data there. It's interesting that we have, oh wait, guys, the 4 went to 3. All right, so it's real time.
That's very cool.
In our testing, the updates are happening under a minute. Okay, so it's really a live dashboard that tells them what needs to be done. You get the trending of work order days to completion. I won't go through all of this, but your reputation metrics, collections metrics, productivity metrics. What is the average process time by pod for each of your key processes? And then Ben or Sam, talk a little bit about this one. This was your concept. And the idea here is the number of active units per month per team. And it's a way of actually measuring the amount of workload they have in a more sophisticated way than just looking at units.
Yeah, I noticed a discrepancy when we would compare pods against each other and be like, why is this pod that manages 225 doors? Why are they telling me they're so much busier than this other pod that manages 300? This doesn't make sense. And so I started to think about this concept of active units. Like I can manage 300 doors, but they're not all active at the same time. The ones that are just paying rent and don't have any major open service requests, they're just silent. They're doing what they're supposed to. They're everything's mostly automated. It's when you've got a move out, when you've got a big habitability related work order, when you've got a general vacancy, that's an active unit. They're going to take that unit's going to require way more amount of work than one that we would call inactive. And so it doesn't really matter how many doors you manage, it matters how many are active. And so this is a great metric to be able to compare against, and not just say how many doors do you manage, therefore you should be this busy. It's how many of your doors are actually in play right now. And that will drive your busyness. And so it helps us with allocation of resources internally for team members and moving people around. Maybe we need to take a pod and make it a 5-person pod for this month because you got 15 move outs. Like that's crazy. How are you going to do that? And just to help kind of manage that.
Awesome. Last thing here is efficiency metrics. And this is where we go to the next level on labor efficiency. Instead of looking at, how many dollars of revenue do you get for every dollar spent on employees? As much as I love DLER, what's the next level of that? How many dollars are we spending per lease? How many dollars are we spending on a renewal?
The question people have is like, well, Danny, what should I do?
Yeah, exactly.
What process would I improve to then increase my direct labor efficiency? The same, similar with churn. You see a number, and then the first question is, well, what do I do?
Awesome. All right, so that's a little bit of an overview, live demo for you guys.
That's
Thoughts?
pretty cool.
Wolf, what would this do for your business? It's not actually like a sales question. I just mean
No.
functionally.
It would be huge because like right now we're trying to honestly hack together some solutions, with Zapier and using like the scorecards and 90.io and a couple things to basically do this. And some stuff we can make live, other stuff still some manual entry or parsing of a report or something like that. But it would be huge.
Yeah. Ben, thank you. Wolf, thank you.
Awesome.
Sam,
Good job.
Zach, thank you. Appreciate you guys contributing to this. So one question on here is, what software is this on? This is we built this on the Profit Coach platform, and excited to see how we can service other property managers with this tool. So let's just wrap this up. I'm going to give a couple of opportunities for people to get some more information on this, but just to summarize the power of Sigi metrics. Number one, the ability to radically simplify prioritization and massively increase focus in a way that ultimately elevates productivity in a major way. Like Wolf, you gave the study earlier today about 4 hours in lost productivity due to task switching. prioritization, focus, and productivity. So we're going from a feeling of like overwhelm at the end of the day to a feeling of like, boom, I did this checklist.
I
and
did the important things.
I did the important things. And ultimately, I think this is big in helping our people leave the office feeling like this.
That's good.
So, and from a financial perspective, helps you guys capture the 19% increase in capacity, resulting in, $166,000 of additional revenue for the average PM. So, next steps, I'm going to just throw up some polls here for you all. I went ahead and put a PDF together of these metrics, and so people are just like interested in sort of things that can be tracked here. Just go ahead and say, hey, yeah, I'd love to have access to that list of SIGI metrics on the dashboard. Just say yes, send me the list, and we'll send that off to you, and hopefully that'll be super helpful. And then we are looking for the first 10 companies to join our beta cohort, and if that's of interest to you, I'm going to throw that poll up in just a moment. If you would like to launch these kind of performance elevating metrics and clarity to your team, we'd love to be a part of that. Zach, I know that we share a common mission at Lead Simple and Profit Coach, which is helping people become and achieve more than they thought possible. And I know that's something that all of you guys share. Stepping away from the software and the tech for just a moment, I want to just like hear your thoughts individually. Like, what are some practical things that we can all be doing to sort of remove that stigma around like property management as a horrible job? What are some things you're doing in your culture, in your team, to actually change the face of what a property management position looks like? Start from Sam.
You have to help your team see themselves as problem solvers,
Yeah.
and that when something comes in and somebody's mad and something has gone wrong, they're not mad at you, they're upset about whatever their circumstances, and you are actually the one that is now in the seat to help them get through that. So once you see yourself as a problem solver, and I mean, I've thrown around the idea of even changing the property manager's titles to just problem solvers. That's all you're doing all day long. So if you can disconnect the personal from it and actually see all of these things that go wrong, especially when somebody's upset with you, as a problem to be solved, then there's satisfaction that you get with seeing that problem come to a close.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we spend a lot of time in coaching and talking about with the team is just, I get it that this is bothering you. It totally makes sense. You're a human, but let's try and approach this from a problem solving standpoint, and you can get more interaction that way.
Wolf, how about for you?
I think for us, it's a tangent to that, but it's what is the job we're hired to do as property managers? Why did that owner hire us? And really getting down to that, it's not to deal with their work orders or to chase their rent. It's understanding a little bit of what their goals are. Why do they have this rental? What are they hoping to accomplish? And that's what we're then going to double down on. They call us and say, hey, I've been managing this rental for X amount of years myself, and I got a tenant that's out of control. Can you guys do it? That's not why they hired us. It's maybe we had one guy who had a stroke, literally physically had a stroke. The tenant was less desirable, causing the guy stress. And he came to the office, had the sales pitch, and was going to take the paperwork home and sign and bring it back. And in that time, he had a stroke. But he signed the papers at the hospital because he realized that he wanted freedom. And for us, it was identifying really what he wanted. It wasn't about the money. It was, he had some specific things, and that's why he wanted to hire us. And when we know truly why the owner hired us, we now have our goals aligned. We know what we need to do. We know what's a priority for them.
And you're willing to work through the tough stuff to make that happen.
Yeah, and also, if we know what the job they want done doesn't align with us, it makes it easier to say, you know what, we're not a fit. So
Creating it, I would just tag on to this, helping people become and achieve more than they thought was possible is tied back to when you think about how the job to be done in property management, and think about how do people think about self-worth. And I heard it defined recently as self-worth comes from successfully completing meaningful tasks. So if you think about successfully completing meaningful tasks, what we're talking about here is showing them what is important, what's meaningful, how to win the game. We as humans, we want to win, but we need to know the rules. We need to know parameters, and that's where good culture comes from. That's where, like, it doesn't matter what game you're playing, and it doesn't matter what game I'm going to be playing personally. If it's in this space forever, I love this space. I love real estate. I love property management. I love everything that about actually helping you guys win. But I'm going to be playing this game of helping people become and achieve even more than they thought possible wherever I go.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great.
What have you been?
It's hard to go left after all this, but
Not for you,
Yeah.
man.
you know, the taking away pain is always, you know, the upset employee. Understanding why they are going through what they're going through. And what I've learned is everyone's different, and some people like certain weird pain, and not everyone, and meaning that they don't mind getting yelled at. It's like no big deal to them. So, you know, we've had a line, we've taken the metrics, we've taken the learning from the people to put them in actual spots that they really, really want to be in. So we're trying to take away their pain, make sure they understand the process. And then, so, yeah, we can move them over. So I think that's good. It's helped out staff, and we always want to be 80% busy is what I say. So with metrics like this, you can actually understand what 80% is. And then if you have a 15 move out month, maybe hit 100%.
Yeah.
But as long as you don't go over that for very
Yeah.
long, it's
Yeah.
like your heart rate.
Yeah.
Keep it, you want to keep it 80% when you're
Mhm.
working out. And if you go to 100, you're not going to sustain it for very long.
Yeah.
But this will allow you to do it.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
That's huge.
Well said. Matt wrote in, says, I'm getting Lead Simple this week, so you guys made it.
Great.
How can I set
Family.
How can I set up Lead Simple to support Profit Coach in the future? Well, that's actually an interesting technical question. And the question behind that is like, all right, so we'll just talk theory for a little bit on like the vision for what this looks like in the future. So number one, Wolf, I know that you've been into this conversation, you're leading this in the maintenance context. We think it's time for there to be standard metrics definitions for the industry. Okay, we did that with financial performance. We all agree on what RPU is, what churn is. Now let's talk about and agree on what a renewal rate is, what days on market is, what days vacant is. I think we finally actually have the data to be able to have that conversation with platforms like Lead Simple. You just couldn't have that conversation in AppFolio. There's no way to pull a renewal report in AppFolio that tells you what that rate is. We now have the data to begin having that conversation. Once we can have that conversation, we can start having conversations around what are the benchmarks. And so the question is like, how do you actually benchmark, because Lead Simple is super customizable? Like, how can we benchmark your renewal process versus your renewal process? Well, I'm gonna answer my own question. The answer is there's still key events in everybody's process that represents
Milestones.
the
stop and
key,
start.
the stop and start of these metrics.
Yep.
You know, so days vacant, call it keys to keys, all right? What's your keys in task? What's your keys out task? We track those two tasks and we count the time in your process and your process and your process. And we can start getting standard metrics based on this data. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag again, that means you get to have your own process still.
Yeah.
But there's key start points that everyone could have, and then
Yeah.
all that has to do to power this dashboard is identify those, they're tagged, and that then powers the dashboard.
Yeah.
So you can still have all the unique stuff that's unique to your market and what you have to do, and you have to mail, direct mail, then you can have all that nuance, but still get standardized operational report.
Yeah.
I think in a couple years or in a little bit of time, if I see Sam and his lease renewal process is consistently, let's just say 14 days and his profitability is up, why would I keep doing my crap? I'm gonna adopt his. So eventually,
Just
yeah,
pull it
we're
right off the slide.
we're gonna have different processes, but I'm like, that is best case, then I'm gonna adopt that best practice. So then we are gonna then be unified.
Yeah, and we're gonna start having role specific, position specific best practice, and I envision best practice communities. Where it's not just the owners hanging out, but it's like my leasing agents hanging out. Well, I don't have leasing agents, but your leasing
Yeah.
agents hanging out with your leasing agents
Yeah.
and exchanging best practices, just like you guys do at the owner level. And then performance-based compensation, like how do we actually align value creation to value
It's
compensation?
not about just butts and seats.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can find a way to create the same outcome, it's only outcome. It's like,
Yeah.
then I want to reward the behavior, the right behavior. And you talk about this all the time. People starting at $10 an hour and then growing to within the business based on their performance.
Well, and clarity around that,
Right.
that performance, because
Yeah.
a lot of times it's like,
Has to be clear.
I just feel like Ben's a lot better than Zach, and so his bonus should be higher, and this will tie everything back to
Yeah.
an actual number.
It's not a gut feeling.
Exactly,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's database.
Yeah, And then lastly, the ability to start differentiating your value proposition. Like we have a 4.5 on Google, and let me show you how we stack up to key industry benchmarks in terms of days on market and whatever it is that's driving that rating. And here's what we're doing operationally.
Right, so all the
that
flood of
difference.
realtors coming in as the market starts continuing to shift downward. It's, yeah, things like this really allows you to differentiate.
And ultimately, guys, I think we build teams that feel like they win every day. And my vision is that we truly create an industry where this community of companies actually has the opportunity to create the type of property management position because we have the data, the best practices, and the methodology to help people actually do more than they thought they could. Like it's more than just a tagline, but it's actually a methodology that helps bring that to pass. So guys, thank you. I'm going to end with just a couple of thoughts for you guys as you end the year with 2 minutes left. Thank you for those of you who expressed interest in talking about how you can get one of these Siggy dashboards. We'll be in touch with you. But in terms of finishing out the year, where do you stand? We talked about that hierarchy of insight. Like you kind of have to work up the ladder, right? And so yes, real-time data is great, and that's where we're going. But if you haven't gotten those financial metrics in place that actually help you understand what's driving your profitability, I want to encourage you again, get on the NARPM accounting standards, get in the game of financial performance, get converted to the NARPM accounting standards, and see how you stack up to the 2022 benchmarks. If you're like, hey man, I still just haven't made that plunge, it's time to do it. It's time to get the clarity on where you're performing relative to the industry so you can close the gap in your profitability and ultimately have the profits that invest back in the team, invest back into making a better company. So if you'd like to get some help with that before the end of the year, get that tax deduction in place. We want to help you get converted and get game-changing insights to kick off the year. If that's of interest to you, just say yes, we'll reach out. And hopefully that will help you guys make the investment at the end of the year that will truly make a difference for 2024. All right. So thank you guys. I really appreciate you being part of the conversation over the last 3 months. Ben, thank you for your thought leadership over the last 5 years that I've known you. And truly, it's an honor to know you guys and be part of this conversation with you. Here's to helping people become and achieve more than they thought possible. Thanks, everybody. Life bless you. Have a great rest of your day. And Ben, it's time for you to go get some lunch. All right.